start right now, sir. Dubey sir, you can start.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back again on Thursday. Uh, as you all know, we are discussing or having a dialogue around one of the talks Krishji had during the Second World War period, which is uh, published in the book uh, The Word Within. And I rely on Shakti ji's suggestions on these, which chapter to take. So he had suggested chapter 81, which is speculation about reality or direct experience. So I'm going to read it out so that we can all hear it. It's not a long one, but not also a short one. And then we can have a dialogue around this theme. D said he had written a book on metaphysics. He had studied comparative religions, and his book showed the way to God. He himself had no deep inner experiences, but having read a great deal of religious literature, he was convinced that there must be a reality transcending the physical. He then began to speculate on the nature of reality, for he must have indulged in speculation considerably. Is it not important, we asked, to experience directly and not speculate about that which is to be experienced? Does not this speculation hinder experience? That which is experienceable is not thinkable. And since you have thought about it, pondered over it, the mind has created patterns and formulations in which it is caught. And so it is no longer free to experience. The necessary requirement for experience is freedom, which is denied through formulation, speculation. Not being free, you speculate like a prisoner. He is free to speculate about freedom, but he is not free. A citizen is a tyrannical government. In a tyrannical government is free only to obey, but he is not free. You are free to speculate about reality, but since you are not free, your speculation will not be that of the real. If you're free, there'll be no need to speculation. Being free, you will experience. So the speculative faculty becomes unimportant, or rather a definite hindrance to the experience of the real. Now, if we may ask, is it not your task to set about freeing the mind from itself, created hindrances? Why do you not set about it instead of wasting your energies in speculation? He was rather surprised and sat silently for a while. Yes, you are perfectly right. I have dissipated my thought in speculation for a simple reason. As far as I can see at present, I'm afraid to look at my hindrances because I may be forced to take a definite action which would lead me to all kinds of conflicts and disturbances. Let sleeping dogs lie. And I suppose that is the reason I escape into speculation. I never saw this till now. And how is one to overcome the conflict? I think this is what Krishnaji said. You are crossing the bridge before coming to it. Are you not? You are not in actual conflict. Your mind is anticipating it and safeguarding itself. Is it not? Therefore, it is avoiding conflict, which it did through speculation, and it is playing the same trick in another form. Is it not more important to understand the mind than the conflict it creates? Through the conflict, the working of the mind is discovered. Through the thought, the ways of the thinker are known. We are concerned mostly with the thoughts, how to mold them, how to change them to reform them, to modify them, and so on, and not with the maker of them, the thinker. As a free, as a tree soon dies if its branches are continuously cut down, so the thinker withers if every thought is observed, is studied, and understood. Now, this is the statement. Uh, we can take a minute and then share our understandings. I think Harshad Bhai wants to say something. Yes, sir. Unmute yourself.
Yeah,
Unmute.
okay. Yes. Okay, may I speak?
Yes, please.
Okay. Um, Through our mind, we gather a lot of knowledge, whether that knowledge is of history, geography, even philosophy, religion. We read a lot, especially those who are scholars, professors, who are working in the university, teaching religion or philosophy, read a lot, then they think a lot, and then they analyze, compare religion, different ideas, and then they come to certain conclusions and they write articles and write books, and other scholars and professors, they read these articles or books and then they think more about it, and that is the way it goes on. So Krishna ji is asking whether it is necessary to read so much, think so much, write about it, or it is better to look at our own mind directly and find what is happening within us. That means observing every thought and without any judgment. In that, there is a direct learning about ourselves happens, and then there is no need to speculate about it. So Krishnaji talked with many scholars and he challenged them that why it is necessary to talk about Buddha, what Buddha said, and comparing what Buddha said with Krishnamurti or other philosophers. That is an intellectual activity. But the direct experience or experiencing, it happens when we become very curious about our own mind in daily relationship. Not maybe initially, one has to be alone and look at every thought which is happening and learning in a direct way. And then one has to, one can do it in relationship with people in the daily life whenever there is a conflict happening with the boss or with the wife or with colleagues, at that time, one needs to be in touch with this conflict happening. And when there is this direct observation is there, then this conflict is not exaggerated, not becomes very big. And so there is a kind of freshness in our living when we are in direct touch with what is happening without judgment. So that thinker, that means that sense of I, the thinker widens and dissolves if every thought is observed, studied, and understood. That is what Krishnamurti says. So Krishnamurti's teachings are about what is happening within us by direct observation. And when we understand ourselves, we understand other human beings because our mind works in a very similar way. So the whole of humanity exists within us. And when we understand ourselves, we understand the human mind, and in that there is some kind of authenticity. Then we don't need to quote Krishnamurti, but we can speak from our own understanding. So this is what I understand, that through the mind we learn so many things, but the mind itself, can it look? And in that looking at the mind itself, the observer and the observed, they are not separate. But in learning about the world, there is an object, the world is there, and the subject, the you, that duality exists in learning about the world. But when we want to learn about our own mind, the observer and the observed are one. And to see it not through thinking. And so it requires freedom to look. And that is why Krishnaji says freedom is at the beginning. And so this becomes very difficult for people to understand that how we look at our own mind is very important, because if we look through thinking, then we are living in the plane of thinking. But one needs to come out from the plane of thinking, and then thinking can be observed clearly. Okay, so I have said enough things. Thank you.
Thank you, Harshad bhai. Thank you. I think it's important to bear in mind that there is no goal. We are not trying to reach anywhere. And even though thought is very important and it's a very important faculty that is with us from nature, we experience in our daily life that many good things happen when thought becomes very quiet. We are able to see, we are able to listen to people. But so long that thought is continuously comparing, bringing knowledge to the fore, and passing comments and quick responses, quick reactions, I think that creates problems. So Krishna at times has mentioned that thought per se is not bad, or thinking per se is not bad, but it must be placed at its right place. That is always, and at the same time, we are not looking at ourselves to reach anywhere. There's no goalpost. I think these are some primary things that all of us must have in mind. And we are not looking at ourselves because we want to experience and we want to see that the observer is observed and all that. That may come or may not come, I don't know. So I wanted to make this comment. We can listen to Mr. Murthy now. Yes, Murthy sir, please unmute yourself.
Good evening to all. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Yeah. The word reality used in this passage is a bit, it creates some confusion. I will just explain where some I am coming. In 1930s and 1940s, Krishnaji was using the word reality to mean truth. Later on, in 1960 and 1970, when he had dialogues with David Bohm, he made a distinction between truth, reality, and actuality. In fact, there is a book by that name, and there they had a lot of dialogues, very illuminating. And Krishnaji defines reality as whatever is created by human thought. And so the truth, he said, it cannot be defined. So in this passage, to my mind, it looks like the word reality, he is pointing out towards truth. If you take this explanation, things will become somewhat clear. Because as Krishnaji said, truth cannot be understood with thought and speculation and thinking activity, because truth is at the level of perception, at the level of insight, not at the level of thought and knowledge. With knowledge and information, you cannot connect with truth. So, in this passage, what they are saying is, why you have to experience truth directly and not with the speculation, not with the thought process. That is what I understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murthy. Thank you.
May I make a comment?
Yes, please.
Yeah, about actuality. We are here in a dialogue. Dialogue is happening. That I consider actuality. What actually is happening. A reality, what I understand is that there is a word and there is a thing. Like the parrot is a word, but that life which exists in the parrot without the word, that I consider reality, that is the essence of life. And truth is something which comes to us, or it have like Krishnaji using the word like blessings or otherness or sacredness, which comes by itself. It cannot be invited. So that happens when the mind is very, very silent. And much more than that, something which cannot be described. And so this otherness was coming and going in Krishnaji's life. So that I would consider a truth which cannot be invited. So this is the way I understand actuality, reality, and truth. Okay, I finish.
Thank you, Harshad. I think Shakti ji wants to make a comment. Unmute.
Thank you, sir. This question of this usage of word of actuality and reality, you see, Krishnamurti has used different words to point at something which perhaps is not possible to convey through language, convey through words. So he has used words. And as Murthy ji said, that with conversation with Dr. David Bohm, he's made this distinction of reality, actuality, and truth. That was because the etymological meaning that Dr. Bohm referred to. But at the same time, he didn't stick to that specific meaning of reality. After that, if you read his discourse after that, he uses sometimes reality, for truth. So, and this passage is from 1942, somewhere between 1942 and 44, 45. So reality here is connected with the meaning of truth. Just that I wanted to say. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Shakti. Thank you. Yes, I too agree with Shakti ji that Krishna ji was not very particular about using specific words because he has been using them in different contexts. So we should not stick to any one word and try to define it because he has used them for different meanings at different places. Yes, Dinesh ji wants to make a comment. Yes, please unmute yourself.
Sir, in today's passage, are you able to listen to me, sir?
Yes.
Yeah.
My question is speculation has got issue. That is okay. But what about right information? One should go through all the information available to him or not? Because this word speculation is basically a guessing without having the right information. Dictionary meaning of speculation is you don't have the right information and you are guessing. So that is okay. But what about having the right information? Even to understand Krishnamurti, I have to study him or I have to go through the teachings, understand first intellectually and then go ahead. Similarly, how do I know that whether Krishnamurti is speaking is applicable to me also, or whether I can have the same experience what he is having after reading Krishnamurti? Similarly, I have to also, Krishnamurti himself said that don't consider me as authority. You have to know yourself. But what should I know about myself? So to know that also I have to understand, and for that also I should have I have to at least have some information about that. Even leave aside Krishnamurti for some time. Even I have to read to other sages also what they have to say. And once my intellect is clear, then only I can go ahead. What Harshad sir has to say on this?
Yes, like there is no authority in this field, and different spiritual teachers, they are using different words for the same thing. So if we are dependent on information, then we will get confused. But lot of thing is happening in our mind, which is possible for us to observe it directly. Like when we get angry, is it possible to see anger arising? And at that time, no amount of information will help you. So it requires curiosity, attention, the whole energy gathering to look at oneself, because a lot of thing is happening within us, and the way we live our life, at the end of the day we get exhausted, like teachers who work throughout the day, and they had to deal with students, parents, colleagues, administration, and then they feel very tired at the end of the day because this looking while it is happening is not there. So a lot of energy is wasted in conflicts. So I feel that gathering information from different teachers, different sources may confuse you because they are using different words, different concepts. And sometimes even the same teacher uses different concepts like effort. One needs effort, or said effort is not necessary. So if we give lot of importance to information, we will get confused. So the direct way to look at oneself, connect with oneself, that is much easier and much direct, I feel. And that is the way if we learn about ourselves, we get certain clarity, and then we can understand what Krishnamurti is saying. Uh, so I feel that we have to start the journey by directly looking, and then of course we can read a little bit of Krishnamurti or other teachers, but not too much gathering information and then working on our mind. I think that is a very secondary thing. It's not a direct. Okay, I finish.
Thank you, Harshad bhai. I just want to add to what Dinesh ji mentioned. I think reading about other sages and so on will certainly enhance our intellectual understanding about subjects and is very helpful. Analyzing and all that is very helpful if I have to prepare a lecture and deliver it. But to understand about myself, I don't think I need anybody's help in doing that, because that is a process which I have to go through myself. If you say it's a hard work, doesn't mean that you really work hard, but what you say that hard work here means, are you really deeply interested in knowing yourself? That is what he is pointing out. And if you read too many sages and too many books, there is no guarantee that you will be able to look at yourself. If you see the academic world, I mean, at least I'm aware of the scientific world, where people have received, the highest awards in the world, like Nobel prizes and so on. But if you look at their personal lives, they fought court cases, they have a terrible personal life and so on. So I don't think that's the right way to start. The right way would be to start where I am, and without any comparison or evaluation, can I just look the way I am? Not saying that I must change and all that. I'm not saying that control is not necessary. In the social world, control is very, very important. But you can't control emotions. You can't decide that from tomorrow I'll not be angry at all. But can I be aware of my anger? For that, I need to be quiet. I think when Harshad Bhai says that the freedom has to be at the beginning, that is what it means. Am I being aware of my, the emotions which are creating problems for me? Can I see that? And without condemning, can I just look at them a little more deeply and see the causation and so on? That is just one way of, expressing my views.
Can I make a comment on this, sir?
Yes, sir, please.
Sir, how do I know that understanding of self is the only answer to this? Because many of the
if you say how, then there is no answer. I don't think any religious book can give an answer to how, because how is always the path to the known. Something which is not known, yes, can't. That's why I said in the beginning that there is no goal post. If I know how, then I'll become the world teacher.
No, many other sages have said that understanding the life and understanding the source behind it, to understand that is more important rather than understanding the self. So how do I know?
Have you done that, sir? Since you have understood that, have you done it?
Yeah. I'm on my path.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
It's
the
it's a
basic question is whether getting an information is important or not.
no. I think it has to start from the intellectual understanding. Krishna is not denying that, but it doesn't end at that. Then I have to test it out in my daily life, whether it's happening in my life. Then only it has a meaning. Otherwise, we can quote Sanatan Dharma, we can quote Upanishad, and that is what we have been doing for thousands of years. And how many people have really reached anywhere? It doesn't take us anywhere. Ultimately, it comes to how I take it, how I receive it in my life, whether it is a statement from Bhagavad Gita or from Krishnamurti or Ramana Maharshi, how I receive it in my life. That is more important.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Murthy wants to say something.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I just wanted to make a comment about Dinesh Waghmare's point about information and knowledge. What we are looking at is the psychological transformation, the disorder in the consciousness of a human being, and how to eliminate the disorder. And elimination of disorder is the order. So, in this aspect, knowledge and information will not help much in transforming the consciousness. On the contrary, it becomes a hindrance. For example, if you take anger as an example, and if you collect a lot of information about anger, how it comes, what we should do, how to avoid the situation, how to not to flare up, you have not got rid of the psychological disorder called anger. Anger is still there. Maybe you know how to control the anger, how to react, how not to react violently when you become angry. But anger is still there. You will be able to manage anger because you have knowledge about anger. But the psychological disorder of anger is still there within you, and at one point of time it will definitely flare up. So to understand the psychological disorders and to come into a radical transformation in consciousness, knowledge and information is not helpful at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murthy.
Yeah.
Dinesh, we will come back to you. Let's hear somebody else. Otherwise, it becomes a question answer. Let's have a dialogue.
May I say something?
Yes.
Yes, Krishnaji had a dialogue with one scholar um, on Vedanta, and Krishnaji said Vedanta means end of knowledge, and that is really it made that scholar feel very happy that yes, uh, and Krishnaji was asking, why do we gather knowledge and then be free from knowledge? Is it not directly look at ourselves as, as it is what is happening? That means not denying our weaknesses or whatever our problems are, but just looking at the problem without trying to be free from it and staying with it. And that is very, very difficult, I feel, for most people. And they want answers, verbal answers, but verbal answers will not help. One has to stay with problems and look at it, and that requires a tremendous energy to do that. And that is why what Krishnaji says is very difficult, because gathering knowledge is easy. Giving talks about Vedanta or Krishnamurti is easy, but to be free from our problems by real observation, that is difficult. And that is what Krishnaji wanted, not to gather the knowledge of even Krishnamurti's teachings, but directly looking at ourselves. Okay, I finish.
Thank you, Harshad bhai. There is a comment by Ravi that I have not been able to dissolve the single thought. Before anybody else comments, I would like to say, why do you want to dissolve your thought?
And what is that I which
Yes.
wants to dissolve?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Rama Rao wants to say something. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Sir, I could see whatever I do, I say, I see based on thought. It is a speculation. It is a projection. The projection, I see that it is a speculation. And it shows me that the thought, whatever you based on the thought, it is coming from old memory. So it leads to that future that might be speculation. It's not either truth or actual. It is just like a trial and error based. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rama Rao. Verma sir, Mr. Pradeep Verma. Sir, unmute yourself.
Audible, sir?
Yes, you are.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
It's amply clear to all those who have listened to Krishnamurti and himself and themselves properly that mind which is highly conditioned cannot see reality or things as they are. This, I think this must be clear to all of us. Mind and intellect with its limited reasoning and logic, etc., can create a virtual reality through speculations, and this includes the prevalent images, idols, stories with reward and punishment interwoven dramatically. So a false reality is created by thought where unknown and unknowable is presented as known. And the innocent one, the innocent beings, innocent persons, they get attracted and take them as authority. One small question comes to my mind regarding direct experience, whether truth can be experienced. I was reading the other day, truth can never be experienced. Now, the mind starts now, whether truth and reality are same, whether truth is different, reality is different, but whether the experience includes something recognition or something, some past impressions at least. So that is a small question to the panel, whether truth can be experienced. Thank you very much for giving me this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I don't know how to answer that, because that's a question all of us must find the answer to. But just an attempt. I may be 100% wrong, but I don't think truth can be experienced, because truth is something which is unknown. So how do you experience unknown? But just an attempt to define truth, I think it is seeing things as they are without any distortion.
That's right.
And that changes from moment to moment. It's not something
That's
which
right.
is fixed there.
Yes.
So that seeing is also changing.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
think we should leave the truth in the field of something which is not known. And each one of us has to have its own way of experiencing or not experiencing. Yes, Dinesh, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay. Thank you.
There are two things, sir, what I want to ask. One is to Mr. Murthy. He was talking about this anger and all this thing. Is this a conditioning or these are the basic features of human mind? Because these are vices, these are not conditioning. So anger cannot be zero. Can anger be zeroed down, or a greed can be zeroed down? Is it that what we are looking for the transformation? This is my first question. Number two is to Harshad sir. He was saying ending of knowledge. So is thought that villain or knowledge is that villain? Or we are not looking for the dying of the thought. We are actually looking for the ending of the ego. These are the two basic questions to be addressed. So thought per se is not a problem, is it? Or conditioning per se is a problem, is it? So.
Best
Okay, may I come in, sir?
Yes, please.
Okay. To answer the Dinesh question, Krishnaji has told us time and again the disorder in the outside world is nothing but a reflection in the disorder in the human consciousness. So we have to understand what is this disorder in the human consciousness. This disorder is nothing but the content of consciousness. Krishnaji again told us consciousness is nothing but the content, and that content is put there by human thought. So all these disorders like guilt, like anger, like hatred, like sorrow, fear, pleasure, all these are the disorders that are emanating from the consciousness of human mind. And so unless these disorders are understood and eliminated, there is no order in the consciousness. So that is the hard work that we are all supposed to do whenever we get a disorder emanating in our system. Why I'm getting this anger? What is the root cause of this? All those things we should look into. So this is a very important aspect, because the anger that I am feeling and I am generating and I am showing is getting reflected in a disorder and ultimately leading to war and also lot of violence and killing of man killing man and all that. So he is telling us that as a responsible human being, you should look at your disorder and try to understand that and try to eliminate that. That is the point I wanted to clarify to Dinesh ji. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Murthy.
Can I make any comment on this?
Let's hear Harshad ji, then you can make comment, and then somebody else will make comment.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I like to ask Dinesh ji, can you repeat your question?
Sir, my question was,
Ah,
is thought per se is a problem, or conditioning is a problem, or ego we have to end the ego, not the conditioning or
Yeah.
thought? That was the question.
Yes, this ego is a manifestation of thinking. If there are no thoughts, there is no ego, the self, I, me. It comes from thinking. So but apart from thinking, there is something else which can look at thinking very clearly. And that thing, Krishnaji calls it choiceless awareness or intelligence. And Raman Maharshi may call it true self or the real self, not the self created by thinking. And our problems arise because thinking creates the sense of I or me, and then says it creates the duality, you and the world, and I like it, I don't like it. So one has to go right to the source of this I which comes from thinking. So one has to look at the beginning of a thought. And to do that, the beginning of a thought from which the sense ego will come, it requires the freedom or awareness to look. And that is our difficulty, that we are not able to look because we are not deeply passionate about looking inward. Our mind actually goes outside to find out what Krishnamurti said, or what Osho said, or what Sadhguru said, and or what Vedanta said. But instead of going that way, gathering knowledge of what different people have said, if we look directly with, but it requires energy, curiosity, attention to look at the beginning of a thought. And when I tried to do that many years ago, my mind became very silent. And it was a wonderful state in which there is no thinking, there is no sense of I, senses can function properly. So I agree with Krishnaji that all psychological problems like fear, anger, jealousy, they are coming from thinking. So one has to look right at the source from where all this thing is coming, and not ask other people about it. So it is, one has to do it for oneself, I feel.
Have I understood it clearly? Do we mean to say that we have to focus on that otherness or benediction or whatever you said, source or the freedom, and thought is not that important? So we should not give importance to thought and focus on that otherness or that quality or silent mind.
No, that otherness is Krishnaji's word, is something much deeper than awareness, I feel, or blessings or sacredness. But this awareness is just looking without thinking, just looking at thinking. And yeah, I wanted to say something. Anyway, I forgot it now.
You can come
And
back
yes,
to it.
yes, one minute. I wanted to say that thinking which comes from clarity, from order, that doesn't create problem. Like Krishnaji is talking, but that talking is comes from direct insight, clarity. So that kind of thinking moves straight. It doesn't create conflict. But without that clarity, without awareness, thinking will multiply and it will create many problems in relationship. Okay, I finish.
I think, Dinesh, any inquiry has to start with thought. Otherwise, how do you inquire? But if it ends in thought, then that's not the inquiry we are talking about, at least in the Krishnamurti's teachings. It must lead to something else, which is beyond thought, which means the thought has to become silent. And that is something which can't be described that this will happen when it happens. One has to experience that, one has to see that. One has to be quiet and see what happens when thought really becomes silent, like Harshad mentioned. So all of us.
I agree with you, sir. Only what I wanted to say that can thought be totally be silent, because Krishnamurti himself is saying that thought should work technically and it should not enter in the psychological field, but it should work otherwise. So are we not? We are talking of what should be that thought should be silent totally.
I think you are speculating totally. What I'm saying is that thought can stay, but it should not interfere in my seeing something.
Exactly, right, sir.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
let's put it that way. Yeah. Anandji, yes, please.
Sir, how do I understand when there's a division, there is conflict? Every second, there is a separation from me and the other, what I call anger, desire, jealousy, etc., etc. There's all the time that the separation is there. Can I observe that? When I say the observer, in fact, is a factor of disorder. because the observer is of the past. It is it is a factor of division. It's a factor of division, the past, and what's happening in the present. This is separation. And it is the law where it says, where there's a division, there has to be conflict, there has to be disorder. Can I understand that as a question, sir? And that observer is the past. When K says, can it be silent? It doesn't mean I'm getting caught in the word. Can I go beyond the word? Is what is essential, sir? When we say he spoke different, used different words and contradicted himself, we are not applying in that particular situation. It means different. Can I go beyond this word, not get stuck to the word? The moment I get stuck to the word, I'm back to my condition. Then observe that is what is one has to look at it. Sir. That's about all. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
May
Anand.
I answer?
Yes,
May I
please.
say?
Yes.
Yes, yes, it is possible to observe not through thinking, but through awareness, which Krishnaji uses the word. So there is something, awareness which is not awakened, and as long as this awareness has not come in our life, everything will look like thinking. Observing thinking through thinking, that will lead to more problems. So there is possibility in us, in human beings, to observe thinking through awareness, which is not thinking. And then really we can see clearly everything, what the thought is doing, how conflict is arising, how anger is arising. Everything can be seen from the top. And this anger and all these feelings are there down below. So, but this awareness is actually hiding under dense layers of thinking. So it is not able to come up and look at thinking very clearly. And then there is a speculation. This awareness is not a speculation. It is possible, and many people are able to look at a tree or a human being or a thought without thinking. So I'm speaking from my own way of looking, and it is not a speculation. Thank you.
Thank you, Harshad Bhai. We'll go to Shakti ji and then to Mr. Pradeep Verma. Shakti ji, unmute.
The small chapter from today, in its second paragraph, Krishnamurti, he raises this question at the end of that paragraph, that now if we may ask, is it not your task to set about freeing the mind from its self-created hindrances? Why do you not set about it instead of wasting your energies in speculation? Because we don't speculate only about God, as this gentleman has been doing, or reality, but we speculate about any information which comes. For example, Krishnamurti talks about that to be with what is, and we usually escape to what should be. Now, if this is purely an information, I can make a theory out of it, and then I can speculate about it. But what Krishnamurti is talking about, this, your task to set about the freeing the mind from its self-created hindrances. So that is his invitation. And this gentleman says something which is, I have seen that within myself many times, this apprehension. He says after that I may, if I'm afraid to look at my hindrances, because I may be forced to take a definite action which would lead me to all kinds of conflicts and disturbances. So this is somewhere a fear lurking behind to remain at the intellectual level, to the level of information and knowledge, and not to go deeper in that. Because in this last sentence, Krishnamurti of this chapter, he says that as a tree soon dies if its branches are continually cut down, so the thinker withers if every thought is observed, studied, and understood. If I make a theory of it, I would say yes. If every thought is observed, studied, and understood, the thinker withers. And I say it is right. I make a concept out of it. But if I neither believe it nor disbelieve it, nor reject it, and I say, okay, I will see whether the thought can be observed, and the thinker withers or not, that is a separate question. But is it possible to observe thought, and what happens with observation? So these are the things that this chapter is I have received from this chapter, because usually speculation is very easy. To remain on the intellectual level is very easy. But this chapter conveys that to remain on that level is our own choice, because somewhere there is some fear. You see, to go into Krishnamurti's message intellectually is very interesting, very soothing. But to that task, that work which Krishnamurti talks, hard work, that is to stay with what is, whether it is thought or whether there is some disturbing feeling. So that's very difficult. So not everybody enters into that. So intellectual level is a speculation only. I myself say that if I remain with a feeling which is very disturbing, cannot remain for a long period. No? But it is interesting to see that at least you are free of an illusory escape. If you don't escape, you are living with the truth of that disturbing feeling or whatever it is there. So this is, I just wanted to say. You see, Harshad ji is here in Varanasi. So something I would like to share with you, because we were talking with each other, and he said something very interesting, that when he used to say to a student to bring that chair there, and the student, if he is not attentive, if he is inattention, he will bring it in a way that it will screech and all that. But if he's doing that attentively, then he will do it in a proper way. So that was something very touching, because what happens that we talk about thought and silence of thought, but when there is in anything, if there is attention, that work becomes skillful, and also the thought automatically doesn't interfere in that. But if a person is taking a chair from here to there, and if he's doing it attentively, at least for those moments, he will not be thinking about some past event or some future imagination. So just that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Shakti. Thank you. Yes, Verma sir, please.
Yes, sir. A number of questions have been raised. Dinesh ji talked about whether anger can be zeroed, as if it is a scale quantification of from 0 to 100 or whatever it is. It's a question of understanding. If there is an understanding, it dissolves, the problem dissolves totally. It's a fact. Now, Anand ji was also raising this, whether separation separation is there that creates conflict, whether when the anger is separate from the person, because this a very subtle seeing is feeling. Feeling is a subtler, to me, a subtler seeing is feeling, which depends on the sensitivity of the person. And anger, jealousies, they are all physiological associated changes are there, a number of physiological changes. It's not that immediately tuck and the anger is there. Certain signals are also there. If you are attentive to your body, then signals are there now. Now is the time. Now the things are raising up. The temperature is raised. The emotions are changing. The hormones are, you can see things happening within your body when this anger or a feeling of jealousy arises. So this can definitely be seen. There is no doubt about it. And once you can see it, really see it in the sense he talked about it, then it is out. You are out of that problem. It is definitely possible. This is what I feel about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Verma sir. Thank you. We can hear Ravi and then Dinesh ji again. Yes, Ravi, go ahead.
Recently, I had been observing one of my emotion and saw that there are thoughts going on freely in my head, and the emotion going on in my body around chest. Those two things were running separately, and they were not interconnected. So I was confused whom I had to observe. And the way thought were working, they were completely independent and going in their own, its own direction. Thank you.
Yes, Dinesh ji.
First, Harshad sir has to comment on this or no? What Ravi said.
Yes, I wanted to say that looking within is not, it may be very frightening for most people because our not natural, our tendency is to not look inside but go outside and see what other people are saying instead of looking within what is actually happening. And when there is a silence, if there is, it could be very frightening for most people because silence, it means that there is no sense of I. It's like a psychological death. So, and but that silence is the real freedom, love, beauty, all that exists in that silence. So it seems that very, very few people are interested in freedom, freedom from this self. Most people are interested in security and pleasure. So freedom, maybe very, very, very few are really serious and would like to give their whole energy, attention to look within. Because the problems, our problems are created by us, most of us. Most of our problems are created by us because we are not really observing very, very clearly. And also, one cannot decide to be aware. Either there is awareness, and that awareness will be there when we really are curious, energetic, attentive to look inward. But trying to be aware, it may work only for a short period, and when we are not aware, many things, fear, anger, jealousy will come. It's like when you are driving a car and on the road, and for 2-3 seconds you are not aware, accident can happen on the road. So one has to be very, very alert while driving a car on a busy road. Similarly, our mind is very busy and one has to see it, everything, what is happening. But to see that, a different dimension is required. This is called awareness. And one cannot decide to be aware. One can decide for a few minutes or even few seconds, but it cannot be made into a habit. So it comes when a person is really interested in going right at the source of everything, from where the problems arise. Okay, I finish.
Thank you, Harshad bhai.
Yeah, I would also like to make the similar comment on Ravi's question, that from my experience, I can say that initially one can have simultaneously thought, feelings, emotions, and even I call it in my views energy is distributed through various channels, and it is the mind is distracted and goes in various fields simultaneously. But slowly, if one is attentive, then things change. So one can remain with it and move ahead. This is what I want to say against Ravi's comment. Another thing, what I want to point out, we are talking so much about today's this thing subject, but one also it is very interesting that Mira, Raskhan, Namdev, Samarth Ramdas, and many others have not followed or not gone through this particular way, or they have not approached the things in this particular way. So, what Harshad sir has to say on this?
Yes, there are other ways like Ramakrishna, or it's a complete surrender of oneself to the divine, and not in a theoretical way, intellectual way, but when they really feel. Uh, and such people, they know that this is the most important thing in their life. And there is a possibility of becoming mad also. Like many people thought that Mira was mad, or Ramakrishna, log kahe Mira bhai bauri. So, and also many people thought Ramakrishna was going mad, but this passion, if it remains, and one is not afraid of even going mad, and once everything clears up, then there is no more effort required to do anything. Everything happens by itself. So one doesn't need to devote, one doesn't need to pray, but the prayer can go on, observation can go on by itself, not deciding to be aware. So there's a great possibility exists for people who are very, very passionate and want to go all the way and want to pay the price, because it doesn't come in a very cheap way. You can't have the pleasure of the world and at the same time you want to go deeper into yourself. It requires complete dedication. Okay, I finish.
Thank you. I think we have Mr. Prasad Mulupuri. Yes, sir. Unmute yourself.
Sir, one or two points.
Yes, please.
On the question whether reality means a truth in this chapter, I agree with Mr. Murthy. He has said here reality means a truth. Krishnaji has used the word reality in different senses, but sometimes he uses it as a synonym for truth. That is the unknown. So that is one thing. Then the other thing, what Mr. Dubey has said, whether truth can be experienced. I hold the view that truth cannot be experienced. But here, in this chapter, he has said, you are discussing something, speculating something, instead of really experiencing. You are using speculation and you are not realizing that speculation is a hindrance to experiencing. So it means truth can also be experienced, though not in some different sense. Like possibly you can see your mind going silent. Up to that point, possibly you can experience it. You may not experience the unknown, but some symptoms like silence in the mind, freedom of the mind. Freedom of the mind is a prerequisite. Krishnaji has exhorted us to work towards a freedom of the mind. Freedom is freedom from anger, so many things. The lust, the greed, ambition, all these things come under the hindrances to freedom. So freedom is that. And then, sir, the third point about other teachers. You can achieve the goal through any number of teachers. That, to my mind, is totally diluting Krishnaji. His first question is, how do you know that anybody has reached? How do you know that I have reached? Krishnaji has reached. So you do not know these things, whether Namdev has reached or any other saint. We are struggling in that area of speculation. When you think of all the other Vedantic texts, Bible, it is our conditioning that we talk of only Indian saints. There are so many other saints in the world. The Sufis are there, the Christian saints are there. So there is no end to this search for saints and their teachings. What Krishnaji has said basically is, don't go by any one of us, inclusive of me. See whether you can look into yourself. Look into yourself, observe yourself, and that is the end of it. He has freed us from the burden of all these scriptures and texts and all these things. So to that extent, I accept only that portion of Krishnaji, that is, look into yourself. That is what he said. That is the ultimate. So don't let us not confuse Krishnaji with other saints by comparing them with him, pointing out the mistakes. That is all a professor's job. A professor can take up for a PhD thesis, something like that. What Buddha said and what Krishnaji said, the comparison, the contrast and all that. That is not working towards the freedom of your mind. Ultimately, what matters is the freedom of your mind. How we behave in our contacts, in our daily contacts, how we live our daily life. That is more important than reading all these texts and wasting time on speculation. That is exactly the chapter, what it says. That is, you work towards the freedom of your mind. And then, so many of us, he says, the questioner says, yes, but I was afraid. That is why I was not looking into myself. I was afraid of what I would find there. So Maybe initially there may be some fear, but I think for most of us, we have crossed that stage. We no longer fear of what we will find in ourselves. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Prasad. Thank you.
Self-knowledge is the beginning of wisdom, sir. That is what has been said.
I entirely agree with Mr. Prasad that we should not compare any sage with another. And bear in mind that Krishna was raised by Theosophical Society to be a world teacher who will define religion in a scientific way to the world. And that is what he did. And here was a man who is saying something from his own personal perception. He has not read any scriptures. And even then he says, don't take my word from it. See it in your life. He said that he is like a mirror. Once you have seen it, then you can break the mirror. So there is no compulsion on us to study Krishnamurti. He has made it very, very clear. I think there is a very nice comment written in the chat box by Katyayani Suryadevara. Ma'am, would you like to say something about it yourself? If you are there, unmute yourself, say something. Yeah.
I was just, first of all, I apologize for the typos when I was typing in the dark. I was trying to say that my ideas more go with the Parekh. I think we have to take responsibility for our thought process. And once we subject ourselves to rigorous self-examination and go to the deeper self, it really helps us and enable anyone to understand the truth, to understand the truth. And as I was trying to say, the thought process is more objective, and that aligns with the choiceless awareness. That's a beautiful word talked by JK, and what Ramana Maharshi says as understanding self. So the thought process we are talking about, once again, is totally devoid of ego or anything that's related to it. So once we go to that innate self and understand us, we can understand not only ourselves, but also the people around us, because end of the day, we are all one. And most of the time, as we understand our thought process, we can also understand where others are coming from. And that's what I was trying to say. And I thought those thoughts are more with Parekh, so that's why I mentioned. And of course, rest of you also mentioned more or less the same thing, talked about it more or less the same thing. And thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
And I appreciate Parekh's comment or somebody's comment, so that I know that I made myself understood what I said. If anybody wants to make a comment, I appreciate that.
I think Dinesh ji has a comment to make. He has raised his hand.
Sir, I want to say one thing, that as Harshad sir was saying, that a teacher is working for a day, then he gets tired. So his energy is depleted. So one should also understand, or one should also go for this understanding of energy process. If he goes for that, what happens, Krishna ji has also pointed out at many places that what sort of energy this sorrow is, or fear is, what is passion is. And at many places he's made a comment also, grief or sorrow, when you remain with it, then it becomes passion. When you remain with the passion, then it becomes compassion. Similar things he has pointed out at many places. So one should also try to understand this energy phenomena. That's what I want to say.
Thank you, Dinesh.
I would say, sir, the way our energy is dissipated with every action of ours. So how can it's only when I conserve that energy, maybe there is a possibility of seeing as it is. But every action of mine, there's a dissipation of energy. Can I first observe that? And also, why would I want to take any action? Because any action, it moves me out of my comfort zone. Why do I want to? Look at things, or when do I say I need clarity? It's only when there's something bothering me, troubling me, very serious. It's like when there's a danger, there's a perception of it and there's an action. I don't see any danger in my life. It is all around everywhere. Wars are going on, people are being killed, but I don't see that. I don't want to talk about it. I may verbalize it. But again, I don't say my actions are the reasons for the violence out there. I don't want to look at that. Because I'm in a comfort zone right now. So why do I want to move out of it? Can I first see that? Why do I want to inquire at all? A serious inquiry. Am I really serious? Is what I need to look at it over.
Thank you. Thank you. I think Dinesh has something more to say.
Yeah, I agree with the Raviji. Why I want to give meaning to everything? Why my every sentence starts with I? Can I observe this? Can I do this? Why I so much I is prominent? Can there be any observation without involving I? Or can there be understanding of the energy without involvement of I? Or can I remain with the whatever the energy has emerged? Can I remain? Can there be remaining with it without the involvement of I? That is the question.
That's the awareness that we create.
I think you can stay with this question.
Okay.
Nice way to end it.
Yeah.
And
May I say something?
yes, please.
Yeah, as long as that kind of observation without thinking has not happened, there will be many doubts and many questions. And people who have remained always in the world of plane of thinking, they will even doubt whether there is something apart from thinking. And so only when such a thing happens that the mind becomes very silent and can look at a tree or a human being, when this happens to a person, then only he will say, such a thing really exists. And that's why Krishnaji was asking everyone, even students, how do you look at a tree? Is it possible to look at a tree without the word or the knowledge which you have acquired about the tree or about your friend or husband or wife? So only when such a thing happens in a person's life that he is able to look at the tree and sees the real beauty, like something extraordinary light emanating from the tree or from a bird or from the star. When a person is able to look in such a way, then he will feel that yes, there is this dimension is available in us to look at everything outside as well as the thoughts which are arising. One can look at it clearly. So that is why it requires authenticity. One has to really go through this kind of observation And then one will never ask, is this possible? That question, whether one can observe without thinking, is possible. Such a question arises only because one has not been able to observe that way. Okay, I finish.
Thank you, Harshad bhai. It's a nice
Time is
comment.
over, sir. Sir,
Nice
time is
comment.
over.
And
Sir, time
yes,
is
yes.
over.
Yeah, let me make the closing remark. I know the time is over.
Oh, yeah. Please.
So I think it's a nice way to end the dialogue session with Harshad bhai's lots comments.
Yeah.
And next Sunday we have Professor Vikas Banyal from Delhi University. He'll be talking to us about Murthy's teachings and its relevance in the field of higher education. He has his PhD on K's teaching, so it'll be interesting to hear him. So we are all invited. Please do join next Sunday at 11 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dubey, sir.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kamlesh, you can end it now.